Parshas Shlach. This week's Parsha begins with Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. Hashem said to Moshe as follows: Shlach lecha anoshim v'yosuru es eretz Canaan asher ani nosei lebnei Yisrael. Send men so that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I give to, or am giving to, the children of Israel. Ish echad l'matei avosot tishlochu kol nasivahem. One man for each tribe, everyone a prince among them. So we have a couple of questions on this. First of all, we have this notion of shlach lecha anoshim. What's this lecha? Lecha means to you, for you. Why doesn't it just say shlach anoshim v'yosur es haaretz? Secondly, we have an explanation of Rashi that's needs further analysis before we can accept it as it is. Rashi says shlach lecha l'datcha. According to your understanding or on your own initiative. Eini mitzaveh lecha, I am not commanding you to do it. Im tirtzeh, shlach, if you want to, send. Why is this? So Rashi says, Lefi shebo Yisrael v'amru, because the children of Israel came and said, Nishlecha, we will send. This is in the second account of the Meraglim, which is found in the first chapter of Devarim, Parshas Devarim, and starts with Pasuk Chaf Beis. That's 122 in Devarim. It says, Vatikru K'moshe Kosov, so this is Rashi here quoting that Pasuk in Devarim. Vatikruvunai Laikolchem, and you have all approached me. So in other words, this is saying that Yisrael approached Moshe. So, question is, first of all, why this extra word? Secondly, what does it mean that Rashi says, go ahead and send? He didn't say go ahead and send. This shlach lecha, which does sound like go ahead and send, he says is l'datcha, on your own initiative, on your responsibility. So the Meforshe Rashi, the Ber Yitzchak quoted in the Shari Aaron, says that the first question actually answers the second. Shlach lecha anoshim could, without any loss of obvious meaning, just be rewritten to say shlach anoshim, send men. Shlach lecha anoshim reads literally send for you or to you men. But instead Rashi, without asking a question, quotes the Chazal that says that lecha means leda'atcha. Now the reason that Chazal can delve into this, according to the Ber Yitzchak, is that we sense that lecha is an extra word, and we also know, for example, in Parshas Lech Lecha, that it means l'tovascha l'hanascha, for your benefit, for your good. God is saying to Avrohom, you go from your birthplace, from your father's house, from your land, to the land that I will show you, meaning Eretz Yisrael, and that, he assures Avrohom, will be l'tovascha l'hanascha, will be for your own personal benefit. Here, say the Meforshe Rashi, you can't say that. You can't say that, credibly, that the sending of the spies is for Moshe's benefit. So, it is an extra word, and it does come to tell us something. It does relate to Moshe. Lecha, which is to you, relates to Moshe. God is speaking to Moshe. But he's not saying l'tovascha l'hana oscha. He's not saying for your good and for your benefit. What he's saying is l'datcha. It's still relating to the for you, but it means according to you or according to your idea of what's appropriate. I am not commanding you. If you think it's appropriate, so do it. What in the world is going on? That answers the perhaps the grammar or usage question about this extra word lecha. But it raises another question, which is that apparently what Rashi is saying is that Moshe Rabbeinu checked with Hashem, and Hashem said, I'm not going to command you. If you want to do it, you do it. If somebody would approach his mentor, his Rosh Yeshiva, his Rabbi, and asks whether he should do a certain thing, and the Rabbi says, well, I'm not going to tell you to do it, but if you want to do it, okay. Now, somebody who's looking for an excuse could probably rely on that phrasing to say, well, he didn't tell me not to do it. But somebody who genuinely wants to do what his Rebbe says, if the Rebbe says, I'm not telling you to do it, if you want to do it, go ahead, he's just not going to do it. He's going to restrain himself because he understands that the action will not meet with the approval of his teacher, of his mentor. If it would, then the teacher or mentor would say, good idea, go ahead. But Hashem didn't say that. So how in the world is Moshe taking it on his shoulders to send out the spies? In addition, we see, as I mentioned earlier, there is a separate accounting in the Torah for this episode. And it gives background, and the background isn't identical to what we see in Parshas Shlach. It's supplementary. And in that Parsha, that is in Devarim, Aleph Chaf Beis begins there, which is Devarim 1:22. It says, "Vatikavunai laikochem, you all came to me vatomru, and you said, Nishlecha anoshim lefanenu." So this sounds now like it's the initiative of Bnei Yisrael. You all came to me, vatikavunai laikochem. This is a one might even say a social movement to check out the land of Israel. Nishlecha anoshim lefanenu, let us send out men before us, v'yachpru lanu es haaretz, and they will examine the land, v'yashivu osanu davar, and they'll bring us a report that said, they'll tell us how to go up. Sounds like a legitimate, the Mefarshim point out, it sounds like a legitimate request. They want to figure out how they can best conquer Eretz Yisrael. And what does Moshe say? Vayita be'enai hadavar. This was good in my eyes. And I took 12 men, 1 man per shevet. Now, whoa, wait a second. This is like the Nesiim here are like representatives. This is like sending a congressional delegation. Does somebody send a congressional delegation to do technical observation? It sounds like a political move on Moshe Rabbeinu's part. What's going on? Well, it appears from the accounting of this narrative in Devarim that there was an initiative, that you all came. This is Moshe Rabbeinu speaking to Bnei Israel. You all came before me. There was a socially widespread consciousness that this is something that the people wanted to do. Now, why does Moshe say Vayita Be'enai? Not only does he do it according to both accountings, but according to our Parsha, Kadosh Baruch Hu was telling him, maybe read between the lines. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not commanding you to do it. If you want to do it, okay. Moshe says Vayita Be'enai. It was good in my eyes. And the Ramban even says if we take it at face value, it looks like Moshe really is responsible for all of this. So, in response to the notion that this is not a genuine scouting mission, it's political, we have to say that that's correct. There was representative of each shevet who went there. So why? Apparently because Moshe wanted to communicate a message to all of Klal Yisrael, and that filtered down from the Nesiim, that the land was actually good. Now, we know that Moshe understood that there was a risk here because he fortified Yehoshua. We say, Kel Yoshiach Me'atzas Meraglim, that he changed Yoshua's name to Hoshea bin Nun's name to Yehoshua to connote the extra special need for saving or salvation, because there was going to be a negative report. So why does Moshe say Vayita Be'enai? And why does God say, okay, you want to do it, go ahead and do it? I talked about this question. I talked with Rabbi Avrohom Friedman, the former Rosh Yeshiva of Skokie Yeshiva. And he suggested as follows. He said that sometimes somebody asks you a question, you have to give them an eitzah about how to act. It's not a very good way to act, but the alternative is worse. In other words, the problem is not in the permission, if you will, or the direction here to scout. It's in the question, it's in the very nature of the question itself. The question implies a lack of confidence in the Almighty, a lack of clarity about the mission of Bnei Israel going to the land of Israel, and a lack of faith or bitachon, emunah or bitachon, that a Kadosh Baruch Hu could actually deliver in a way that wouldn't harm the Bnei Israel. Now, there's some people who have suggested, I heard this from Rav Goldvith, that the objection of Nesiim was that they were going from a period where they were living in a supernatural way, permitting them to engage in spiritual endeavor and contemplation, and they were going to be going to a land that operates the way nature does, which is you got to plow the land, you got to till the soil, you have to plant the seeds, you have to water, you have to fertilize, you have to tend the crops, you have to collect the crops. It's harvest. It's much more complicated than just picking up the mun that was dropped at your doorstep or farther on, but still in your vicinity. What appears from these psukim is that sometimes, as Rabbi Friedman said, the question belies a problem. Now, how are you going to respond? Moshe Rabbeinu could have said, no, I'm not sending spies, I'm not sending representatives. And the consequence of that would have been worse. Vayita Be'enai, and it was good in my eyes, meaning, well, if the people want to send, first he checks with Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm not commanding you. Why? Because sending the spies was not going to end up good, but Moshe knew that sending the spies was better than not sending the spies. Rabbi Friedman suggests that there are times when, let's say, for example, in child rearing, where a child is not attracted to a certain type of endeavor, a religious endeavor. For example, he may not be attracted to a long, intense davening, but he is attracted to challah. So do you take him to a minyan? If he's a child, do you take him to a minyan where he's going to suffer, and who knows what the ultimate consequences of that would be? Or do you take him to a minyan where there's good food and he enjoys himself? Now, should people be going to shul in order to enjoy the food? Probably not the main reason. The main reason should be to daven to Hashem, to engage in tefillah. But nevertheless, if the engaging in tefillah is actually squelching at a level of a long drawn-out davening, is squelching this young man's connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then maybe it's just better that he switched minyanim and he goes to the place where he's going to enjoy, even though it's communicating that enjoying the food is really the important thing. What Moshe Rabbeinu is teaching us, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us through this Parsha and Parshas Devarim, is that there are times when the question is such that there is no good answer, but there is an answer that's less worse than other answers. And sometimes that's the one you have to choose in order to preserve whatever value you can. Have a good chance.